Hi, welcome to the second Northeastern IPM Center Toolbox webinar, and thank you for joining us this morning. We have the pleasure of having Dr. Juliet Carroll here talking about IPM weather apps and NEWA, and it's going to be a great conversation. Before we begin, I just wanted to tell you that this session is being recorded, and there'll be a copy of it within a few days at the website that's listed there, and we'll also list that again at the end of this session so that you can watch this as many times as you like and forward it on to your colleagues who might find it useful. We also welcome your questions. At any time, you can write the questions in your in the chat box, which is to the right, and if you'd like the question to be asked anonymously, please just make a note of that. Actually, probably all the questions I'll just ask anonymously, but if you'd like me to use your name, maybe you could say that. All right, and so we're going to move along now. I would like to introduce Juliet Carroll. She's led the New York State IPM Program's Weather Network, NEWA, the Network for Environmental and Weather Applications, since 2005. As the Fruit IPM Coordinator for New York State, she recognizes the importance of weather in driving disease and insect development in orchards and vineyards, and has worked with colleagues across the Northeast to develop NEWA into a user-friendly suite of apps to assist growers in their IPM and crop management decisions. In addition to leading NEWA, she helps fruit growers in New York use IPM tactics to protect their crops from insects, diseases, and weeds with minimum risk to the environment, their health, and crop yield. She holds a BS from the University of Maine in botany and an MS from the University of Massachusetts in plant pathology, and a PhD from Cornell University in plant pathology. So thank you very much for taking the time to come with us.
Great, you're welcome.
Okay. All right, so the main question everyone's going to have is, what is NEWA?
So NEWA is essentially a network of weather stations that are located on the ground that transmit weather data to a central server, and the data then is used in a number of different models. So they might be insect phenology models that are built on a base temperature for development for that particular insect. They might be a plant disease model that is built around the weather, moisture, rain, and temperature requirements for infection for that plant pathogen, the fungus or the bacterium that causes the disease. And we also show weather data, just essentially the weather data that's being collected by the instruments. We tabulate that in hourly tables, and I've got some examples of those on the slides. So if we were to, there we go. Basically, in a nutshell, growers are sharing data through the network, and then they provide us with feedback and guidance in terms of what they'd like to see for IPM tools, et cetera. The data that's collected is sent every 15 minutes, and then we take that and accumulate it into hourly data on the tables or daily summaries. People often want to see, okay, how much rain did we get today, or for the month of July, how much rain fell, and that type of thing, and we'll gather that information for them from their weather station.
So how extensive is the network, and how many weather stations do you have?
Well, there are now, as of yesterday, 403 weather stations in the network, and there are 10 member states that are participating, and then there are growers in 5 other states that don't have statewide membership. The statewide membership allows an unlimited number of weather stations to be plugged into the network in that state. And just recently, New Hampshire joined, North Carolina and the North Carolina or the Southern Southeast Apple Growers Association joined in, and Virginia joined. So they're all very new, and actually we're looking to collaborate with Michigan State University. They have a weather network called EnviroWeather. And so we're looking to build a collaboration with them and exchange tools and exchange data.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so I think I have a map here that shows the member states that are highlighted in purple and the states where there are individual growers that they are highlighted in orange. I don't know if you can potentially see Maryland is in there, nested beneath Pennsylvania there. And then the larger map gives all of the little dots show the 403 or so weather stations that we currently have hooked in, and those include airport locations that send their data to the National Weather Service. We partner with the Northeast Regional Climate Center, and then through that, we're able to pull in the airport weather stations, and we have a correction factor for relative humidity for those sites because they are somewhat different, obviously, than an agricultural setting in terms of the humidity at the airport because there's all the macadam, the tarmac, et cetera, that alters the microclimate there.
Okay, wonderful. So how has NEWA grown over the years?
Well, it started in 1996, and let's see, I think I might have a slide on that, but we won't worry about that right now. Let's see, actually, can we, okay, let's continue there. Yeah, okay, this is the slide that kind of shows graphically the growth in the number of weather stations. And in the little green box, you can see the years that each state actually joined the network. So we started in 1996 in New York, and then, let's see, in 2010, Vermont joined, and a number of other states in New England joined, Massachusetts, Connecticut joined in 2004. New Jersey was a great partner because their state climatologist runs a mesonet. A mesonet is basically a set of weather instruments that are on the ground, and so they were already running that in New Jersey. They had, I think, 30 to 40 weather stations already, and the beauty of partnering with the Climate Center is they have this programming expertise, the meteorology expertise, and they partnered with Dave Robinson, the state climatologist at Rutgers, and we started pulling in that data. So immediately had all this additional data for the New Jersey agricultural communities to be able to run through all of our IPM tools. So that created a big bump. I think New Jersey is the green portion of these bars starting in 2011 and rolling through 2015. So we've seen significant growth in the number of weather stations since 2007, 2008.
Yeah, I can see that enormous amount of growth. So what are the top 3 reasons that growers use these tools?
Well, I would say when I thought about that question, I mean, I'm sure each individual grower is going to have their own reason, what those top 3 reasons are, but we did a survey a while back, and the main reason was for the IPM pest forecast models. And then almost a close second, if not equivalent, was simply to have the weather data. So the farmer, the grower, the producer needs to know how much rain has fallen, what the temperature has been, and now that's the other beauty of partnering with the Climate Center and the the National Weather Service. We're able to pull in the National Weather Service forecast into our tools, so we're pushing the results of our tools and phenology models out 5 days into the future. So top reasons has just become even more exciting because they've got the pest forecast tools, they know what happened, but now they know what's going to happen 5 days out. And it's the same with the weather. We can look at the weather and we have a little click on button and then they can access the forecast data and see what's going further out. Probably another top reason there is crop management. So things like irrigation. Should they irrigate? we have a couple of evapotranspiration tools. One is specific to apples, and it has been created into an apple irrigation tool that we have. And then the other is just general evapotranspiration. And we link to a number of other tools that are available nationally or in other states to provide growers kind of with a central clearinghouse for those types of things. And the big driver right now is the apple thinning tool. So apple carbohydrate thinning model based on the carbohydrate balance that's estimated in the tree. And it informs the grower how much thinner to apply to knock the apples off that they don't want, so that we can have those big, beautiful apples in the grocery store.
Okay, great. And I know you're going to talk about some of the tools and share them with us today, but before we get into that, can I ask you what impact it's had for people who've been using the NEWA tools?
So, you know, the key thing, of course, for us working in IPM and integrated pest management is knowing whether these tools are helping inform their intervention, and certainly sprays. So we posed a survey in 2007, actually before we even launched the current website, and we were really excited to find out that most people responding to that survey, and we were surveying grape growers, apple growers, onion growers, and potato growers in New York, because that survey took place really before we started to expand out into other regions and other states. And basically, they agreed, or strongly agreed, that NEWA helped them reduce their spray inputs. It helped them improve their spray timings, certainly, because we know when these infection events are occurring. That's what the tool is going to be telling them. We know when the insect development has reached a stage where there should be intervention, particularly with insects that have 2, 3, or 4, I'm blanking, generations per year. Thank you, Yana. Oh my gosh. And then they definitely agreed and strongly agreed that it would alert them about pest risk, and it definitely enhanced their IPM practices. So that really made us feel really good about what we were doing with NEWA and the IPM tools. And from that survey, we were able to build support to recreate our website, and we held a number of grower forums to do that, and with end user input. I think we have a really good user-friendly website. We definitely try to continue to make sure it's open access so that people can get in and use these tools for free.
I was really struck by the fact that over 90% of users said that they would recommend it to other farmers, and that they save an average of $19,500 a year
in spray costs.
Yeah.
And I mean, for certain farms, obviously onions, potatoes, grapes, and apples, that was our survey base. Those are really big, high-value horticultural commodities in New York. And so that is, I think, where we were focusing most of our effort starting in '96 and moving on forward. But yeah, I mean, certainly in the apple industry, saving $250,000 per year on average is very significant, and it underlines the impact that insect and disease damage has on crop value and yield. The other thing that's exciting is just last year and this year, we've started tracking our page views in greater detail, and we are up to 2 million page views per year for NEWA, which is really gratifying. It's very exciting. I actually went over those numbers several times because I kind of couldn't believe it, but it's exciting.
Great. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, and before we start talking about the forecasting tools, and I know you're going to share several of them to us,
Right.
Can you tell us how you define prediction and forecasting? Because I know there's a fine line there.
Right. So There is kind of a fine line. I mean, you could say predicting something is in a sense, a type of forecasting, and it may just be semantics. I think most of us think about forecasts when we think about weather, and what is the forecast out? What is the long-term forecast? What is the short-term forecast? The prediction models, we're really predicting that a particular growth stage of an insect is going to occur. And so when I think about it, I mean, maybe what I would think is that plant pathologists tend to think more in terms of forecasting diseases, and entomologists maybe think more about predicting insect development. But it's probably really just whoever is speaking. I think they're kind of one and the same thing in a way. Indeed, we used to call these things models because they're like mathematical models that look at the relationship between temperature, weather events, weather conditions, and the development of a pathogen or an insect. Now, increasingly, people are talking about these things as being tools.
Great.
Yeah.
So how many forecasting tools do you have?
We have about 30. We have about 30 forecasting tools. And this is a snippet. This slide shows a little snippet of the pest forecast menu. So on the NEWA website, there's a blue ribbon that goes across, and under pest forecast, this is the drop-down menu, and you can see that there are a number of choices there. We are mostly rich in apples and grapes, and also in potatoes, tomatoes, and onions, but we do have an alfalfa weevil model and a cabbage maggot model. And we have a wish list of about 40 other models. Okay, I'm falling into the model semantics. You can see that. So we have a wish list of about 40 other IPM tools that our end users and stakeholders would like to see built up in NEWA. The nice thing about all these pest forecasts is increasingly they're being upgraded with that 5-day National Weather Service forecast. And each output provides details of the past couple of days, the current day, and the 5-day forecast.
Okay, thank you. So you mentioned the apple thinning tool. Is that your most popular tool?
It probably is the biggest driver right now in terms of membership, in terms of growers purchasing a rain-wise weather station, installing it on their farm, and connecting that data into NEWA and running it through. Yes, I would say so. That is probably our most popular tool. It's a pretty big driver.
And do you have any new tools that were recently launched?
We just launched a degree day calculator, and that we had before written in a different web language, PHP, whereas most of our tools are written in Python currently. So basically, we had to wait until we had some funds to translate that from the open source PHP language to the Python language that the programmers currently are using. So that basically allows the end user to select from any base temperature that is used in any of the NEWA tools, and then select a start date and an end date, and hit calculate, and it'll basically total the accumulated degree days for that weather station location as queried by the end user. And it also will show a graph of how those degree days accumulated over time. And if you scroll over the chart, it'll pop up a little message box that will give the date and the accumulation at that date as you scroll over that.
So I can say that seems like a good point for us to switch over, if we can, to to actually looking at the NEWA
Sure.
website. Maybe you can show us it's on the screen here. So I just have to share Firefox. And is it showing up? Okay, wow,
great.
modern technology.
Okay.
All right, so would you like to show us around and
Yeah.
maybe show us a tool or two? And
So this is, you can see this is the NEWA website, and using the outside scroll bar, you can scroll all the way down here to the bottom, to the footer, and then back up to the top. This is the blue menu that I was talking about before. And here are the weather data products that you could select from. This is the list of the pest forecasts that you can select from. We recently upgraded our station pages. So every weather station has a station page, and we recently upgraded so that each state where we have a station shows up here. There are more states than those that I mentioned before because we always pair a weather station with a sister station, and sometimes those are airport locations in a state where we really don't have a grower base. For instance, we've got the District of Columbia. So over here, I also want to bring your attention to over here. If you want to learn more about NEWA, all the links on that are on this side. And then we recently revised this left-hand sidebar to include other products from other sources. So we have other weather data sources here, other pest forecast models. The cucurbit downy mildew forecasting is really quite popular with those who are growing cucurbits. Some of these are IPM type tools. And then we have other crop management tools here that are available. So let's just test drive one of these tools. So I'm going to select apple diseases because fruit is near and dear to my heart, and if I try to test a vegetable model, I will probably confuse you because I'm not as familiar with those. So this is the way basically things start out. And I mentioned that we upgraded these, and you can see it wants me to select a state from the menu to the left. That's so that a map will show up. Okay, we're in New York, so I'm going to be New York-centric. And you can see the way the map shows up now. It highlights and activates all of the weather stations that are in New York, but shows those that are nearby in gray. So if you're a grower, let's say down here, but you want to know what's happening over here in Pennsylvania, you would know that there might be another location you could look for.
So if you're close to the state border, there might be one. Okay.
Yeah, you might want to go back up here and look at, okay, what's happening in Pennsylvania or New Jersey if you're in the Hudson Valley or out on Long Island or something like that. I know a number of growers like to know what's going on in New Jersey, for instance, so they know what's coming. You know, they have a perspective of how things are rolling along in the states to the south. So what we're going to do in this little selection tool here is we're going to select fire blight, and we're going to select a station location. So this list is now just going to be the stations in New York. Now, if you know your station name, that's great. But if you don't, and you maybe you're here in central New York, close to the Lake Ontario region, you can zoom in on the map, and you can do that, and then you'll see that that's a Wolcott station. Or you can see, you know, basically the names of some of these others. So you can either click on the station here that you want to look at, and it'll put that name in here for you, or you can select it from the drop-down list. The date of interest will always default to the current day, or you can go back in time. You can even go back in years to see what happened last year. Of course, that's going to depend on the installation date for the weather station. So you may get an error message that says data not available because the station hadn't been installed in 2014. So, you know, that may be something. I'm just going to keep this at the current date, and then I'm going to hit Calculate button, and the results are going to appear in the Results tab. And these are the fire blight prediction results for Williamson at the Mason Farm, Williamson, New York. And you can see that the model is estimating that the first blossom opened on April 24th. But if I know, let's say that, no, I didn't have blossoms this year until May, you can go in here and change that. It's going to highlight the current date. I'm going to change that to the 12th. And you can see it's going to recalculate the risk. Right now, the risk is low. Why? Because it's been super cold in New York, and fire blight likes heat units. It's a bacterial disease of apples that builds up epiphytically in the floral parts and can be spread into the flower by a rain or a moisture event, even something as little as dew. But if it's cold, the bacteria don't develop. The other thing that you can do with this model is you can alter the orchard blight history. It defaults to the middle risk level. I could say fire blight is now active in my neighborhood, and it's going to recalculate. Again, it's still low risk because it's been so cool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to last year, which was a really bad fire blight year, and I'm going to look at May 14 of last year, and we'll see how things were last year. Now, it's not going to show us forecast details, obviously, because there is no forecast. So that's something we're working on. The end users are kind of thinking, well, maybe you should just put in the actual data there, Julie. And so Tarek Cox, the plant pathologist, and I are going to be working on some upgrades to this model. But you can see how high the risk was last year. The other thing that you can do with this model is you can enter a streptomycin spray date. So let's say I'm looking at today is May 14, and there was extreme risk here, but I actually put a strep spray on May 12. So let's see what that would end up looking like. So if I do that, it didn't really change things very much. And that is probably because it was so incredibly hot during that period of time, and the risk was so high. The other thing that you can do with this tool is you can look at shoot blight symptoms. This is built on an algorithm that we borrowed from the Mary Blight tool, which is it's a freely available tool for fire blight that you can download to your PC. Unfortunately, it isn't available for Apple computers. So let's say you saw shoot blight. I'm going to have to go back to 2015, or this won't work very well. Let's say I saw shoot blight or a strike in July on the 16th. It's going to look back or there was sorry, I did that backwards. There was a severe thunder event and thunderstorm or some kind of shoot blight event. Down below here, it's going to tell me if the infection event was on July 16, we would need to check for symptoms starting on July 22nd. And so it gives the grower the ability to target when they need to go out to their orchard to scout that orchard for fire blight symptoms and be able to do management practices such as pruning and that type of thing for fire blight. The other thing that I wanted to show on this, there are these two scroll bars. One is on the outside and then one is for the iframe that's in here. Some of you may have navigated websites that operate like this, but there's a more info tab. And so we link to a number of resources that will help the grower community with information regarding fire blight. And indeed, there's a link to the Mary Blight download right here, and I had mentioned that for those people who are interested in running the Mary Blight model on their computers. So now let's look at that degree day model, that degree day calculator. So it's under weather data. We can go here to the degree day calculator. And as I mentioned, this is kind of our new tool. The website is going to remember that you're in New York, so the state is going to stay as New York. And let's say I want to select something that's closer to home here in Ithaca. So I'm going to select this, which is the Cornell Orchards. And I can select any of these degree days. So I'm going to do base 50, which most of us know is typical growing degree day base temperature. And I'm going to want to know what it was from May. Actually, no, I'm going to go April. Let's say tax day, April 15 through today. And I'm going to click Get Report, and that's how the results show up. So it gives you the accumulation here in this row, the seasonal accumulation in this bottom row. So as of the 23rd of May, 5 days out, it should be 89 growing degree days. And then it'll also show you the daily degree days, base 50, in this top row here. And you can see it's been cold in New York, particularly over the weekend. I mean, we had kind of snow where I was, little pellets of ice falling. And then this is how these charts will work. So you can scroll along this chart and then get that little pop-up to show up. So I don't know if any questions have come in about these. Maybe I should show a station page. So the station pages.
Can I actually ask a question about this?
By all means.
The seasonal accumulation day by day changes, but then it jumps quite a lot by May 23rd.
Right,
so
right.
This isn't the addition of this day and this day and this day. It's accumulating.
Right, right, it is. So you go from 59 plus 1 is 60, plus 0 is 60, plus 0 is 60, plus 5 is 64. So there was probably, you know, there's a little wiggle room once you get into forecasts. Rounding errors are real. Any of us who have done any rounding in Excel know that depending on how that sums, you know, it may round down after it, because 5 may actually be based on 4.8, you know, and then 64 may be based on 64.3 or something like that. So yeah, and you'll be able to see and track these as they go through time.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Wonderful. So you wanted to show us a station page?
Yeah, let's show a station page. Now you can get to the station pages here. We would go to New York. And the nice thing about this little utility is it shows the map again. We're all familiar with that at this point. But it also has the table of all of the stations all the way down, and at the bottom it shows the number of records found. And that's a moving target. Sometimes the stations go offline, there's a power outage on the farm, or their router dies, or the station stops reporting and needs to be reset. So this is a moving target here, and of course, being the leader of NEWA, I always like to see that number going up. So you can access these either by clicking here or by clicking again on the map, zooming in and seeing. So I'm going to click on Albion, and we're going to go then to the Albion weather station page. What this page has is it has a number of quick links to weather data summaries by month. So the daily summary for May, you could click here and show the summary. Oh, this is great, because this shows those on the webinar that some of the data shows up in brown italicized font. That means that we didn't receive those hours of data, and they're being borrowed from the sister station. And if you want to know more about what the sister station is, you can come down here, click on that, and it'll take you to where we're basically patching the data in from. We definitely don't want missing data, because then accumulations of degree days go awry. They become erroneous because they're missing days, and the accumulations are not accurate. So I'm going to use the back button to go back to the station page. So there are some quick links here. These are quick links to the forecasts for Albion. So I could go, let's say, to the apple scab page immediately from here, and it would give me the results. I wouldn't have to do anything with that little utility on the left-hand side and select stuff, and it would give me the apple scab results. And you can see that it's been relatively dry, but also cold. And so everything's pretty much green right now. Apple scab is not, we're not showing risk for apple scab infections in Albion, which is kind of nice because the trees right now are at a growth stage where they're highly susceptible to apple scab at time during bloom.
I'm struck by how user-friendly it is.
Oh, that's great.
Even I can understand it. So.
Oh, that's fantastic, and that's what we want to hear. I mean, that's what web people do. It's called heuristics, where they actually have a science that investigates how easy it is to use websites.
And I can see that if I had a weather station on my farm, it just gives you could click in here and just click on pictures each day, and it makes it really accessible. And now I can see why 99% of people recommend it. So
definitely.
It makes sense to me.
That's great.
All right, great. So now we've seen the website, its capacity. Can you tell us how people can use it? What are the ways? Is it free and open access? How do you have a weather station? How can you participate?
Right,
I'm going to click back
some slides on that. Yeah.
Okay,
so it is free and open access. We have tried very hard to maintain free access for NEWA. Each state partner pays a minimal state fee of $1,750 per year. That fee started out at about $6,000, and we have continued to chip away at it and chip away at it. Obviously, the more members we have, then the lower those fees become. So for $1,750 a year, the state opens up to any grower, producer that wants to put a weather station in and connect to NEWA. We are crowdsourcing our data so that really the growers are our biggest partner because they're buying the weather station, installing it, and maintaining it. Although there are certain states like Connecticut where the University of Connecticut has received funding and they installed a weather station in every single county, plus I think 10 or 11 additional ones in, I could have those numbers wrong, so I apologize. I probably shouldn't be giving actual numbers, but they also have some additional weather station on farms. So they actually are running their network at the University of Connecticut for the entire state, whereas in New York, as our funding base eroded in IPM, we increasingly were embracing growers to purchase the weather instruments. So that's really more of our model going forward, that crowdsourcing thing.
Okay. So if I'm a grower and say I'm a grower in Connecticut, right, I could go in and I could find all of the data that you've just shown us for the one location in my county. Right. And then what if I, with a vineyard with a particular slope and a little unique microclimate, how would I participate and put a weather station in?
Right. So basically, if you are in a member state, you would contact the state coordinator. And I don't know if it doesn't show here, but I'll go back to that in case people were still reading some of that information. The state coordinator would provide information to the grower or the producer, the person who is interested in buying a weather station, how to contact Rainwise Incorporated. I have an email that, is probably about 12 inches long, 14 inches long. It's big, long for an email, but it walks everybody through all the steps that they need to go through, from purchasing the weather instrument to setting it up, establishing a name, registering it with Rainwise Net, and then providing us with the metadata that we need in order to pull the data in from Rainwise Net. So we scrape the data off of the Rainwise website. But in order to do that, we need this thing that's called a MAC address. and it's basically a specific address for their IP data stream that's coming from their weather station to RainWise.net. So then once their station is reporting for about 24 to 48 hours, we pull that data in, the weather station page is created, and the data starts flowing through the models. What we do, obviously, is for the year that they install the weather station, for all of the models that need to reach to January 1, we will patch the data in from a sister station. So we assign a sister station, and we'll patch that first year back to January 1 as needed. For the monthly templates and the hourly data, what we'll do is we'll borrow the data just up to the beginning of the month for when that station was installed. The cost for a weather station, and I'll go to this, I don't know if that shows up very well, it may be kind of blurry, but the cost in total, including software, cables, everything, is $1,890, so it's $1,890 for a weather station. They come with a 2-year warranty. You can up that warranty by 3 years. I think they can be warranted for up to 5 years.
And how long? And typically, how long does it take to set up? Does it take a couple of months from the time you first think about it, or can it be done within a week? Or
it can be done within a day. Okay. So Weather Underground actually posted a YouTube video of setting up a RainWise incorporated weather station, and it took less than, I think, a half an hour for them to set it up. Obviously, the thing that takes the longest is the post in the ground. You want a post that's very firm, that's going to prevent the weather station from being buffeted by the wind, because if it's moved by the wind, the tipping bucket rain gauge can sometimes tip and you'll get erroneous readings. So probably the most time would be to establish the pole, the location, and the site, and figure out the site. And we do have siting guidelines on the NEWA website. We also have, last year, put together some troubleshooting guidelines on our website. So, and I heard from one of my cooperators, Peter Udemans at Rutgers, that RainWise has a manual for how to install weather stations, and I was so happy because they had not for a long time, and it was kind of frustrating when we would get questions in, because I don't really know a whole lot about installing these weather stations, but they're pretty easy to install. The other thing that I should say, since I mentioned Weather Underground, is RainWise has established a data sharing ability. So the grower not only gets NEWA, but they get all of the tools that might be available through RainWise.net and through their web-based portal for their data. So growers can set up to share their data with Weather Underground. And if they're used to, you know how it is, you get used to using a particular website, and if that website changes, it's kind of like having a frontal lobotomy. It's like you don't know anything anymore. So if growers are used to using Weather Underground, they can send their data to that service and share that data that way, as well as with the NEWA tools.
Great, wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. So I know we have some great questions coming in, but before we get to those, what are the key takeaways that you'd like people to have from our conversation today?
Okay, so a couple of things. I want to make sure to acknowledge the Northeast Regional Climate Center and their partnership with the New York State IPM Program, and everybody, all of the partners within NEWA, because without their expertise, their guidance, and their partnership, basically their collaboration, we really wouldn't exist. They helped us create automated outage reports for the weather station owners, and I should mention that because that has been, I have gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. If we don't get data for a 24-hour period, we'll send an email out to our contact list. And then we continue doing that on a weekly basis. And then at week 3, we silence the station because we don't want, it's open source, we don't want our end users to become frustrated with a station that's been down for more than a month. This is my partner slide, and it's exciting. It's getting filled up. We have 2 apple grower associations that are partners. Minnesota Apple Growers pay for the state membership in Minnesota, and they don't have a problem if vegetable growers join in or anybody else. I think there's a University of Minnesota faculty member that has a weather station connected in through there. But if we look at kind of in a nutshell, was this your question, Yana? Yes. Okay, so I get talking and then
no, it's great.
It becomes dangerous. My brain stops working. So in a nutshell, NEWA is providing access to IPM decision support. And IPM is all about sustainable management of pests using methods that minimize environmental, health, and economic risks. So NEWA works with plant disease epidemiology, insect phenology, plant phenology, and crop management, and basically generates these phenology models and forecasts. We have 15 plant disease forecast tools, 10 insect phenology tools, and 3 crop management tools, and 12 degree day tools. We informally added a degree day base temperature for seed corn maggot, which is a pretty important pest of corn. And so we just did that on the fly, and basically we are strong in fruit and vegetables. We recently, Betsy Lamb at the New York State IPM Program recently got proposal funded, so she's going to put together some Christmas tree and woody ornamental nursery insect phenology models, and she kind of blew me away. She said, yeah, Julie, they're all based on base 50, and I think there are 70 or so of those. So, yeah, 70 more insect tools just for woody ornamentals. So keep tabs. We're always changing. We're open access, real-time, query-based decision support, and we have some built-in biofix states or user-entered biofix states, and we have that interactive user interface, which we've gotten really good feedback on. Thank you, Yana.
Great. Well, thank you. So we have some great questions, so I'm going to read some of these for you. How precise do you foresee weather predictions in the future, minute by minute and by months, years, decades out?
Okay, so I'll answer the months, years, decades out question first. I would say that those who are working in the area of climate change, that is exactly what they want to be doing. They want to be projecting months, years, and decades out so that we can prepare for change in that way. I don't really see our models being able to do that right now. The first half of the question was minute by minute, right? The precise sort of gathering data minute by minute. So we should, at the end of this growing season, we try not to change anything during the growing season, but at the end of the growing season, we will be working with RainWise to create what they call an API. Please don't ask me what that means because that's programmer speak, but we will be creating an API to allow us to ingest 1-minute data. We have had a lot of push from growers. They want 1-minute data so they can see right now exactly what's happening on their smartphone at their weather station. The other thing that's going to go along with that API is the ability to ingest the optional data sensors of soil moisture and soil temperature, which have been those are installed across Connecticut, and we've just needed to wait for the programming expertise at RainWise and at the Climate Center to coalesce so that we can get that accomplished. So yes, I think as we gather more data, we will be able to become more precise. The other thing that is happening is we have a national digital forecast database and things called real-time mesoscale analysis that climatologists and meteorologists do on a national scale, not only here in the US, but in Canada and in Europe. So what they are able to do, many people may be familiar with Skybit and ZedX tools. Those are built on this digital data and satellite imagery data. So it's not data that's collected by sensors on the ground, it's data that's collected by satellite or is created by forecast algorithms. And that is becoming more and more precise. So in the future, it could be that not only will the grower have their on-site weather station, but they will have a map of gridded data that overlays the entire region. And they would be able to select a grid or a point on that grid that would provide these tools from that digital forecast database. So I do think that over time these things are going to become more precise.
Okay, yeah, wonderful, thank you. So another question we have is, it sounds like NEWA is the ultimate collaborating organization. And who else do you see NEWA partnering with in the future? And are you strategizing ways to better meet growers' needs through those collaborations?
Yes, on all counts. So the three closest collaborations that are on the drawing board right now, I mentioned the one with EnviroWeather at Michigan State University. They are keenly interested in the apple carbohydrate thinning model and the apple irrigation model. And we are keenly interested in some of their berry tools and some of the other tools that they have for field crops that we don't have. And so that's on the drawing board right now. We are in conversation basically with MSU and the EnviroWeather people to build that collaboration going forward. My thought, and I don't know if it's the same vision that will come to pass, but my thought is, would it be great if we could give all of NEWA data to EnviroWeather, and then EnviroWeather would be like an overlay across our entire NEWA region, and then EnviroWeather would share their data with NEWA, and we would have essentially two systems that overlapped, and over time our end users could say, we really like the way this is done, or we really like the way this is done, and through, again, crowdsourcing and getting feedback from a number of people, we would then build a better mousetrap, so to speak. The other two areas of collaboration that I see close in the future are state climatology networks. One is EcoNet at NC State University, and the other is, I think it's DEOS for the Delaware State Climatology Network. I think their acronym is DEOS. But I apologize to Dan Leathers if I have that wrong. He's the state climatologist at the University of Delaware. And he has, for little Delaware, they have a phenomenal mesonet. I think they have 100 weather stations on the ground, and they do a lot with their weather data. So we could really benefit from partnering with them. And the growers in North Carolina could definitely benefit from partnering with us, and we would benefit from partnering with Ryan Boyles. He has some really interesting ways to look at data. He has photosynthetically active solar radiation and things like that. So I think the future is really, really bright for this type of collaboration going forward.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. That actually fed into one of the questions that we have here was how many weather stations are needed, and hypothetically, if every grower in a state had one, would that be too many?
Well, you should ask me that question. Of course, I am going to say that if every grower in a state has a weather station, that would not be too many. I would hazard a guess that many growers in New York have weather stations already. They may have Spectrum Technologies weather stations and the suite of software that goes with those that is available from Spectrum Technologies. They may have Davis Instruments and the software that goes along with Davis, or they may have Onset Instruments. So there are a number of private companies that sell weather instrumentation and have models and tools available to go along with that. So I would hazard a guess that a lot more growers in New York have weather stations that are shown on our NEWA map, because we just don't have the programming expertise and capability right now to ingest all that data. And there would be, copyright infringement and other aspects
that could be barriers. You know, obviously we're not going to grab Davis instrument data and, you know, and that type of thing unless we have a conversation with Davis Instruments. But no, I mean, I think that the more weather data you have that's on the ground, that's local to your farm, the better your IPM decisions are going to be. Absolutely. Did that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And we have time for one last question. I think I'm going to ask this one. Could you use NEWA to not only save growers money, but to help emphasize benefits to the environment and improving societal health?
Yes, I think we could do that. I don't think that we talk a lot of, you know, talk in quotes. I don't think we articulate that in the text that's currently on the NEWA website. But the time is ripe for a graduate student project or a scientific investigation along those lines, because the more of these weather stations we have, the more tools that we have available, the more growers will be able to practice IPM without having to invest in a weather station potentially, or the more we will understand how practicing IPM on the level that is supported by the tools protects the environment. So obviously, if we can find out from growers that before they started using NEWA, they were applying 10 fungicide sprays to manage apple scab, and now they've backed that down to 6, that's, you know, a 40% reduction in fungicide that is targeted for apple scab. So I think there is a place for that. And I think that there are growers who would embrace that language and who would want to sort of wave that flag. And I know a number of growers, apple growers in New York, for instance, who do that on their websites because they are direct marketing or they have youth people coming in, and so they want to communicate with the consumer about that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Those are great questions and great answers, so thank you. All right, we have a couple more minutes till we close up, and I just want to, here is Juliet's contact information. If you'd like to be in touch with her, her email address is right there, or you could also contact us and we can put you in touch. And just a reminder, there'll be an archive of today's webinar. The recording will be up on our website within a few days, and it'll be on demand. You can just click and watch it, and feel free to send the link to anyone who you think might be interested in hearing what Julia had to say about NEWA and the app. And with that, I will just say thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise and your graciousness and for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yana.
Okay.
Thank you for hosting me here today.
Okay.
I really appreciated the opportunity to talk with everyone about this.
Thank you. And thank you for the folks who joined up for the live session and for your great questions. And there will be another IPM Toolbox webinar coming up, and we'll send details through our network when that happens. So thank you. That is the end of today's session.